In 2021, Saudi Arabia announced The Line, a 170-kilometer mirrored city designed to house 9 million people in the desert, powered entirely by renewable energy, with a $500 billion budget and a 2030 completion date. On September 16, 2025, after 5 years and $50 billion spent, construction was quietly abandoned. No press conference. The cranes just went still. This is the full story of how the line went from a $500 billion vision to a 2.4-kilometer trench in the Saudi desert, what the money actually bought, and what a leaked audit revealing the real cost of $8.8 trillion tells us about what went wrong from the beginning. To understand what happened, you need to understand what was actually being promised. The line was Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's pitch for a complete reinvention of urban civilization, a fully enclosed linear city running through the mountains of northwestern Saudi Arabia, connecting the Red Sea coast to the interior. Everything inside would run on renewable energy. AI would manage every system, and residents would reach any destination on foot in minutes. The outer walls would form a 170-kilometer mirror visible from space. The Public Investment Fund would finance it. The target completion date was 2030. According to insiders who spoke to the Financial Times, board-level decisions were made entirely from 3D renders. Engineering feasibility studies were, in their words, alarmingly left out. The Crown Prince shaped the design personally. Nobody in the room was going to tell him no. In March 2025, the Wall Street Journal published a leaked internal NEOM audit. It was the kind of document that fundamentally changes the story. Saudi Arabia had been publicly stating the line would cost around $500 billion. The audit said the actual cost to complete it was $8.8 trillion, more than 25 times Saudi Arabia's entire annual government budget. At 9 million residents, construction alone works out to roughly $977,000 per person before the city runs a single service. The project's own engineers calculated a completion date of 2080. Saudi Arabia had these numbers and continued making public announcements about 2030. By the time construction was formally abandoned, the Public Investment Fund had committed somewhere between $40 and $60 billion to NEOM. What exists on the ground for that money is 2.4 kilometers of foundation work out of a planned 170. The world's largest piling project was started and abandoned. A groundwater dewatering system described as the largest of its kind ever built sits in the desert unused. Concrete batching plants and precast factories built specifically for the line have no other application. In March 2026, NEOM canceled a $1 billion tunneling contract with Hyundai. 2 months later, the connector high-speed rail contract was terminated, leaving contractor WeBuild holding a €1 billion bill for work they will never be fully paid for. Active NEOM job listings dropped 74.6% over the course of 2025. The PIF recorded an $8 billion write-down across its giga-project portfolio. The CEO, who had run NEOM since 2018, was quietly replaced in October 2024, and his LinkedIn stopped receiving updates months before the suspension became official. Before any construction started, the land had to be cleared. The Tabuk region, where the line was planned, sits on the ancestral territory of the Huwaitat tribe. Starting in 2020, Saudi authorities began forcibly removing communities to make way for NEOM. Abdul Rahim al-Huwaiti filmed himself from inside his home, explaining why he would not leave the land his family had always lived on. Saudi security forces killed him in April 2020. 3 other tribe members were sentenced to death for refusing to vacate their homes. At least 47 people were arrested. The line is now abandoned. The land they were removed from is a construction site that is no longer being constructed. There is nowhere for them to go back to. The $8.8 trillion cost estimate from the leaked audit is larger than the combined GDP of every single country in Africa and South America put together. The line's intended population density was 260,000 people per square kilometer. Manila is currently the most densely populated city on Earth at around 46,000 per square kilometer. The population target for the line has been cut 4 separate times, from 9 million to 1.5 million to 300,000, and now to a reported 100,000 people across all of NEOM combined by 2030. At the actual rate of construction before the abandonment, Completing the line at that pace would have taken approximately 3,000 years. Saudi Arabia still has not used the word canceled. Every official communication calls this a suspension, a strategic review, a recalibration. The distinction matters more than it might seem. Mohammed bin Salman announced the line personally as the centerpiece of Vision 2030. Officially canceling it would require him to explain how his signature project turned out to have a real price tag of $8.8 trillion and a real finish date of 2080. So instead, contracts disappear quietly. Workers are relocated, job listings come down, architects walk away. The project continues to officially exist while physically ceasing to happen. Saudi Arabia is not going to answer the question of when a suspension becomes something abandoned, something permanent. The public announcement said the line would be complete by 2030. The internal audit the Saudi government was sitting on at the time said 2080. That is a 50-year gap between the press release and the engineering reality. For perspective, 50 years ago, the internet did not exist, and Concorde had just made its first commercial flight. The people who are going to move in by 2030 will, according to the project's own engineers, be long dead before the last section is finished. Here is where things actually stand. $50 billion spent, 2.4 kilometers in the ground, a tribe cleared from their land, 3 death sentences for refusing to move, an audit the government hoped would stay internal, a CEO replaced, a ski resort stripped of its only event, billion-dollar contracts canceled without full payment. Saudi Arabia calls it a suspension. The contractors holding unpaid billion euro bills probably have a different word for it. The most watched megaproject in modern history is a slab of concrete in a desert. Whether it becomes anything else depends on one person deciding that the truth about what it was always going to cost is finally worth saying.